progress. Got it.
Good morning, Dan Johnson.
Good morning,
Nice
buddy.
to
How are you?
talk to you again.
You too. I am. Find myself in Waco, Texas today.
Are you really? What are you doing in
Yep.
Waco, Texas?
I am at a satellite university station for Texas Tech and Tarleton State. So
Okay.
it's educational stuff.
Okay.
I've been working on a new program for you and I haven't even gotten a chance to talk about this for ketamine patients.
Oh, and so
Yeah.
what's the deal? Tell me about it. Or whatever you
I'm
can tell
coaching.
me.
No, that's cool. It's totally cool. I'm coaching ketamine patients.
Okay.
People
And
who have
what is a ketamine patient, just so I know?
people basically who have had severe depression and anxiety, who other kinds of medication haven't worked for them, or perhaps they've been talking with a therapist for a while and they just need some additional help, and so they're starting ketamine treatment. And so I get them for 12 months basically, where they take a ketamine treatment every 3 days. And it was originally invented as a sedative, and it gained favor during Vietnam, actually, called the buddy drug. And the idea was if you were under a tremendous amount of stress and trauma, they would give you the sedative because it would knock you out and make you real happy. Come to find out, it had not only psychedelic effects, but mood lifting effects. And then within 24 hours of taking it, you start to form new neural pathways, and the dendrites of your brain begin to unfold and spread out and grow again in more positive ways. And so when you take it in conjunction with therapy, it is, for many people, some studies say 60, some studies say 80% of people have a tremendously positive effect and result from it. And so basically when somebody starts ketamine treatment now, they get me once a month, talking to them about their experience and talking to them about what they're dealing with, as far as the symptoms of their depression and anxiety, and then doing some coaching, some life coaching stuff. So
is it cool. Natural, or is it art? Is it just a drug?
It's a synthetic. Okay. Yeah. Which is odd because it's not that odd because, LSD is a synthetic and it does the exact same thing. It does the same thing as like a psilocybin. They're all sort of related in the way that they treat the brain. But basically you get a mood lift and you get an open mind. And the benefit of ketamine specifically is twofold. Number one, it doesn't affect your serotonin the same way, which means you don't have the hangover kind of the next day of feeling, down and low, which is cool. And the other thing is that it seems to have, based on the research, it seems to have an excavating effect. Sometimes they call it the great excavator, where if you will set an intention of there's some things I need to figure out, and then you take a dose of ketamine, it has a tendency to help excavate some feelings that you've been hiding and some insights that you need to come to. But at the same time, it removes you from experiencing the traumatic effects. So basically you can sit on the sidelines and look at trauma and depression and anxiety and work on it without being stuck in the middle of it with those knee-jerk reactive responses that people tend to have.
You're emotionally disconnected from from the trauma itself. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things that people report is that they begin to realize how much shutting off that emotion has shut off so many of their other emotions. I was just talking to a lady last week who she had gone to a reading of kind of a textbook, almost kind of thing, at the library about the nature, the flora and fauna of Oregon, where she lives. And she just began crying at how beautiful the whole place was. And she was talking about how it's just, like going to listen to music now. She finds it more beautiful than she ever did before. And she realized that she'd just been shutting off, so much of her emotional responses to avoid dealing with depression and anxiety. And now that she wasn't dealing with the depression and anxiety, she was finding so much more beauty in life, dealing with her kids. And it's been, man, listening to these people's stories. I've been shadowing basically other coaches for the past week and just listening to the progress that people have made from their first visit through their 12th. And I'm just flat out blown away, frankly.
Really? Yeah, it sounds a little like mushrooms, darn it.
Yeah, the people that are researching ketamine are researching psilocybin at the same time. Or some universities are working with ketamine, whereas some are working with psilocybin, and they're extremely similar. extremely similar. Um,
So I wonder if they basically activate the same parts of the brain.
Yeah, they work a lot. They work a lot the same. I think the biggest difference being that psilocybin has a tendency to give you a mood lift based on your serotonin levels. So the next day you can feel down, whereas the ketamine has about a 3-day effect. So that's why we dose every 3 days. Yeah, so your mood stays lifted for about 3 days, and it's not a permanent. It's not something you're going to stay on for the rest of your life. You get there's an amping up phase where we get the dose just right. Sometimes they call it the light bulb dose, when the light bulb comes on and you go, oh my God, wow, I never thought about it that way, or, oh, I can see it now. I can see what's been troubling me. And then from the light bulb dose, you get about 6 months of really beneficial treatment experience. And then it sort of wanes over 6 months. So basically my goal as a coach is to take somebody through a 6 to 12 month program and help them come up with the coping mechanisms to deal with what was triggering the anxiety, what was triggering the depression, things like that. So it comes along with, when you sign up as a patient, at least with the organization I'm working with, it comes along with dialectical behavioral therapy stuff, cognitive behavioral therapy. You get a coach. You get, and then we still recommend that people have their regular therapist that they go see to help deal with things. But basically, they're just finding so much of trauma and depression comes from some, or anxiety and depression comes from some trauma, typically when you were young. And it doesn't even have to, there's 2 ways to look at trauma. There's the grand scale on a scale of 1 to 10, did you not get the prom dress you wanted, or were you raped and tortured? You know what I mean? So that's one way to look at it. The other way that is beneficial here is that whatever is the hardest thing you've ever been through is the hardest thing you've ever been through. Mm-hmm. And so you can't necessarily compare it to the hardest thing that someone else has ever been through. The brain treats trauma the same way. The hardest thing you've ever been through. Yeah, the hardest thing you've ever been through is so if you had a very charmed life and then your mom and dad got divorced, that might be tremendously traumatic in your mind, but maybe not compared to somebody who lives in, the Republic of Congo and what they're going through. So there's kind of 2 ways to look at trauma. And this basically says, look, something happened, when you were younger that created this response in you, and you've probably kept it buried. Maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't. But what we'd like to do is say, okay, how is it affecting your life now as an adult? And how can we rewire the meaning that you gave that? So, let's say it was something as simple as, I didn't get to go to prom because my grades were too low or something. Maybe that's it. It could be something as simple as that. But maybe that meant, I'm not smart enough to do this, and I'm going to miss out, because I can't apply myself. There's all kinds of things, all kinds of stories and narratives that your brain creates to tell you why something happens.
And once you begin to squash yourself, it just keeps going, right?
Precisely, man. Precisely. I mean, there's, I've dealt with military veterans already who, saw just the horrors of war. And then I've just dealt with, man, I had a great one the other day. This guy he's retired now. And he's trying to figure out what to do in his retirement. And he's terribly depressed. Mm-hmm. And someone close to him said, well, you're just not smart enough to be able to get back out there. You've always been a little dumb, and it just launched him into this massive depression. Man, maybe I have always been kind of dumb, maybe I can't learn. So, and this guy ended up going out, and I get emotional every time I talk about these, but this guy ended up going out after his treatment and after working on this stuff. And as a retired guy in his later 60s, studied and passed the life insurance and investment exam. I've taken the life insurance and investment exam in my prior life. You know that. That is not an easy damn test to take.
I've been there, done that.
Stressful, yeah. That is a stressful, tough test to take, and this guy did it. And so it's not that he's dumb. He just had a slower way of doing things, a slower way of talking, a slower way of processing things. But he was able to say, I'm not dumb. I just deal with things differently than some people do. And sometimes that makes people think I'm not that bright. But look, I've taken this great big test, and now I get to go out and start a whole second career in my 60s, So it's things like that that are just really inspirational to me.
Yeah, I think that's great. My son was put into a class in school to help him learn because
Yeah,
he was slow. Well, the problem was he was slow because he was busy figuring out all the angles, right? So he'd go
yeah,
in, he'd look at a problem, and they want, A, B, or C, and he'd think
right.
of like A through Z, and then he'd come
Yeah,
back, okay, which out of those is the best for A, B, and C, right? And
yeah,
so it just take him longer to do stuff because his brain was so freaking active. And so
yeah.
you don't really know. I mean, everybody's
No,
different. Everybody sees and approaches things differently, and
yeah,
slow is not bad. So,
no, it's
well,
not, man. It's not.
so what training did you have to do to
They
be
met
able to be
me.
a counselor?
Yeah, they met me, and it's important to say that I'm a coach, not a counselor. They met me because a friend of mine was familiar with all the work that I'd done with veterans with suicide prevention.
Mhm.
And I've done a lot of one-on-one counseling with them, coaching with them, and then family and friend coaching for their
Mhm.
civilian, brothers, sisters, uh, husbands, wives, so on and so forth. And I've done that for years, obviously, on a volunteer basis. And so I had just seen a lot of the stuff that had to do with PTSD, traumatic brain injuries. Um, it's been, a life mission of mine for numerous years now. And she was familiar with that work, and she was familiar with how effective it had been. Um, there's a couple of places now where they teach the kind of program that I was working with, and they've taken quotes from it and put it up as posters on the walls and that kind of thing. And so it's been a very productive program, and it gives me a tremendous amount of joy and fulfillment to know that it has helped so many people.
Yeah.
So essentially, this company continues to expand and grow as more people find out about it. And they wanted a male coach who had experience with veterans specifically. And not that that's all that I'm going to be working with. I'll work with all kinds of people, but somebody that they could say, yeah, this guy actually has experience specifically with veterans and trauma.
Yeah, he's handled the worst kind of traumas. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's the war is about as bad as it gets. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So she reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in talking with these folks?" And I'll talk to anybody. So
good
I
for you.
uh,
Yeah.
I met with the doctor and the practice manager and everything, and I said, "Yeah, I think I would do this with you." So kind of on a part-time basis, I'm coming on as a coach for those folks. So and now I'm in an educational phase where it's just gobs and gobs and gobs of reading and watching videos and that kind of thing. So
And so
I'll be doing this for. Mhm.
no, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'll be doing this for about the next 3 weeks. I'm a week in right now, just shadowing people and seeing what it's like, and then I've got about 3 more weeks of education, continuing education, and more shadowing before they'll let me loose on the general public.
And so
But really,
does everything happen in Waco or will you go back and do this in?
no. I'll be working remotely. Actually, as a matter of fact, the home office is in South Carolina, and I'll be working remotely via meetings like this. It's a lot like a Zoom meeting, but it's medical records protected, so everything's confidential and all that kind of
Yeah, I
stuff.
got
So,
you.
but yeah, I'll be working from my house or the park or the lake or wherever it is I want to
That's
work.
so
You know
good.
me. Yeah,
And
I'm not gonna get
helping
tied down to an
people.
office. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, you're a traveling man. So
Mm-hmm.
I imagine when you got on the road and was going from town to town singing that you were kind of enjoying yourself.
Oh yeah,
So
I love my time on the road. That's my me time right there.
yeah, to
So
me
that's
that's always the road is always I'm not excited about it ever.
really,
I'd rather be at my house. I love my house, and
dude. As much, John, as much as I love you, I'd rather be driving right now.
yeah, and I don't blame you. The guy that was just here and just left is drove all day yesterday, and he's going to go drive all day today, and just taking
Yeah,
care of his kids and doing the things he needs to. He doesn't think anything about it at all.
yeah, yeah. It's
So more power
I
to you. So
I
I
love it.
think it's
I don't even listen to the radio or anything. I just like drive and think, and that's where I've written on most of my songs. The vast majority of my songs have come from time when I was on the road, and I'm just singing them into my phone, and then coming back later on and figuring out, what the chord structures and progressions are. But yeah, that's where a lot of that stuff is done. That's where a lot of the writing that I get done. I'm just talking. I'm using voice to text from the phone.
now
So
when do you like to travel?
uh-huh.
Yeah, no
It's been
kidding.
I mean, there's nothing much you can do other than look down the road and think, and so I try not to distract myself with music or videos or, of course not videos. But if I can use that time to dig through, and I had this neat, I think you and I might have talked about it. I had this neat process that I was doing for a while where I would look for something that struck me visually and then think about the feelings that it gave me. And I would make 2 notes. Here's what I'm looking at, and here's the feeling that it gives me. And then later on, I would take that and say, okay, how do I incorporate that into a song? So instead of describing the feeling, I can describe what I'm looking at instead. You know, and so there's all kinds of stuff that you can do when you're out there on the road.
Yeah. So like I say, more power. I think it's better to be out and about. I'm just, lazy. I'm here and I'm happy and everything's good. And the truth is, I shouldn't say lazy, because I get up and I get started and I am working 8 to 10 hours a day before I stop, but I'm doing exactly what I want to do. As I only stop when I get tired. I otherwise I'm involved and mentally engaged and going strong with whatever creative tasks that I'm working on. So
speaking of creative tasks, you and I showed up today to talk about AI creation.
So do you want to talk about, I'm going to try to drop in a couple of things that show because I've been doing the graphic side of AI, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing the written side of AI.
Yeah.
And both of those things have come on big over the last year. And so I've actually put my hands on it and done enough with the graphics engines and explored several different graphics engines now to kind of feel for what AI can and can't do.
Right.
So I will, as we're talking here, I'll put a few examples up on the screen. But let's start with you. Your experience is brand new with Bard, right?
Yeah.
So you just finished beta testing it. And so
I'm still in the middle.
What's your impressions?
I'm still in the middle of the beta test. I don't know how long they're going to give me, but I'm enjoying the hell out of it. So the quick story is, a few days ago, I got an email because I have a Google business account. And I think you got one also.
I did.
That said, because you have a business account, you're eligible as a beta tester for the new AI Bard system. And I signed up within, I'm going to guess, 3 minutes. Like, I got the email and I'm like, yep, I'm in. And by the time I signed up, it already said the queue is full. You're on the waiting list. But then thankfully, 2 days ago, it said your place is up. Would you like to join the beta test? And so I jumped in there and I started asking questions. And let me tell you this, on my way down to Waco today, I was talking to Bard and I noticed a substantial difference between 2 days ago versus today in the personal nature. Yeah. When I very first started, it was only, 2 days old. As far as like public testing, obviously, God knows how long they've been working on it, in the lab. But the answers that I was getting were so general that I may as well have just Googled whatever the question was. I mean, it literally just looked like those first few points that pop up on Google, right? Mm-hmm. And there was nothing particularly personal there. There was nothing particularly helpful there. As a matter of fact, after doing this for a while the other day, one of the questions that I asked, and I copied and pasted all this stuff so you and I can talk about it today. And then I was going to actually, if you want to, open up Bard while we're on this and talk to him or talk to it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to.
So after not getting anything of any, nothing that struck me as particularly smart, if you will, I just asked Bard, I said, what is your best use right now? And Bard said, hang on a second here, I'll just tell you word for word what Bard said. I've got it open in a document. I said, what is your best use right now? Because I had asked things like, what's the best business to start this year? And, things like that. And it was just giving me these super generic, top 5 listings on Google kind of thing, right? So I said, what is your best use right now? And Bard said, I can help people use the English language and learn more about grammar. I can help you look up information on the internet. And I can make recommendations and give you tips on subjects like creative writing. But that was it. It was just very plain boilerplate kind of stuff. Well, today, on the way down here, I started another conversation with Bard. And I'm going to skip through a couple of the basic stuff. But I said, can you write me a poem, please? And Bard wrote me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stanza poem about life, about the beauty of life.
Really? So can you tell me the poem?
Yeah, here we go. The world is a beautiful place full of wonder and magic. There are so many things to see and do and so much to learn and experience. The world is also a challenging place full of problems and obstacles. But even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The world is a place of hope and possibility, a place where dreams can come true. So never give up on your dreams and never stop exploring the world. The world is a gift, a treasure to be cherished. So open your eyes and your heart and let the world in. The world is a beautiful place and you are a part of it. So make the most of your time here and live your life to the fullest.
And that's beautifully written. So that actually sounds a little like you. So I wonder how much it's learned just from talking to you. So
yeah, well, that's actually by the end of our chat today, I was saying this has been really fun. I'm enjoying working with you, and Bard comes back and says it's really great talking with you too. I'm really enjoying our conversations. I'm learning a lot, and I look forward to learning more about you and the world that you live in. Like it went from general boilerplate Google answers to having a lovely, friendly conversation, within 2 days. So one of the questions that I asked was, how quickly can you learn? And Bard said, I can learn very quickly due to my large language model architecture and the massive amount of data I've been trained on. I can learn new concepts and information at a rate that is comparable to or faster than a human. For example, I can learn a new language in a matter of hours by reading and listening to examples of that language. I can also learn to perform new tasks by watching demonstrations or by being given instructions. I believe my ability to learn quickly is one of my most important strengths. It allows me to adapt to new situations and to continue to improve over time. So these answers just became more and more detailed. So my next question was, well, then what's the most difficult question you've had to answer? To which it replied, the most difficult question I've had to answer is, what is the meaning of life? This is a question that has been pondered by philosophers and theologians for centuries, and there is no easy answer. I've tried to answer this question by thinking about what's important to me and what I want to achieve in my life. I've also tried to understand the different ways that people find meaning in their own lives. Ultimately, I believe that the meaning of life is up to each individual to decide, and there is no one answer that will satisfy everyone.
That's great.
So, yeah, man, we had some, the next one I asked was, how do you determine fact from fallacy? And there was a 5-stage process that ended with common sense. But critical thinking, research, fact checking, cross-referencing, and common sense. And it's more detailed than that, but I'm not going to read the whole thing and take all that time. And then I came up, and then I phoned for some friends and said, what questions would you ask the smartest computer in the world? And then I didn't get the answers to these because I thought it might be fun if we wanted to do some of these together. But the last thing that's germane to what you and I talk about is I said, can you write stories? And Bard said, yes, I can write stories. I can write stories of any genre, from science fiction to romance to mystery. I can also write stories of any length, from short stories to novels. I can write stories by using my knowledge of the world and my ability to generate text. But I can also write stories by using my understanding of human emotions and my ability to create characters that people can relate to. I believe my ability to write stories is one of my most important strengths. It allows me to communicate with people in a way that's both entertaining and informative.
Interesting. So, my mind always jumps ahead, right? So I see the capability. Yeah. And so I think, what would it be like if you were a baby in a crib and you always had this voice next to you in your head or wherever we
knew everything,
future, right? Yeah. Well, you can implant it and just have it in their heads. But this mentor that is always helping, it's helping you to understand the world from the very first little baby awareness on that, and it's tailored just to you, right? Because it learns you and it helps you. I think, what would that do for an adult, right? What would that do to create a well-balanced adult, to be able to have every question ever in your head answered by an extremely smart and caring, personality that's in your head?
It's fascinating that you say that, because with the ketamine company I'm working with, one of the benefits that comes with signing up with them is that you get an AI chatbot for cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy, when someone goes to college, to become a licensed professional counselor, that's what they're trained in. That's your first master's degree, before, if you want to go on to get a doctorate in psychology or whatever the case may be. But the first thing you learn is cognitive behavioral therapy. And so this AI chatbot basically has been trained in all of the knowledge and wisdom that they have in the education of cognitive behavioral therapy. And instead of talking to a human, you chat to a little robot, and it's a little animated robot called the Woebot, WOE, as in tell me your woes. And so I have a hard time not laughing about, changing all my R's to W's and talking willy fast. But You talk to the Wobot, and it gives you all that, you say, hey, I'm struggling with whatever the case is, or, it'll ask you, it's like talking to a human, and it'll say, hey, how are you feeling today? Has anything, been going on? And, and that AI is not as advanced as Bard. Bard, I literally just turn on my recording and just talk to him.
Almost like talking to a person.
Yeah, exactly. That AI gives you a list of answers. And so it's an algorithmic system where if you answer this, then it takes you here, and so it has limited, I think the most options, it's been like 5 options when it asks you a question, of these 5 things, which is troubling you the most, or whatever the case might be. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I have always had this dream in my mind that there would be this thing called the Book of the Truth that could analyze all the information that we currently know and cross-reference it and come up with a true answer, which is why I asked Bard, how do you tell truth from fallacy? Because to me, that resource to be able to say, hey, analyze all the data in the world and tell me what's going on with, blank, fill in the blank. That just freaking fascinates me. And now other people I've talked to about this are just terrified. They're like, oh no, God, it's going to turn into the Terminator. It's going to take us all over,
I was listening to a thing about the future of AI, and they were talking about smart cities. And they said really one of the main problems you get into with all of these databases is that they're all siloed, they're all separate. And he said when you start putting them all together and having them work to make a city run more efficiently, you get incredible results.
Gosh, can you imagine how traffic would change if everything could be rerouted and the traffic lights could change times that they,
just changing the time the traffic light turns red, right? Changes everything. And so, and beyond that, how many buses do you need? Where do the buses run? What's so a smart city being run by computers where everything's connected doesn't just fit. It doesn't just give you a better answer for one thing. It gives you a better answer for everything. Everybody that lives in that city is just happier, better taken care of. Everything's more efficient for them, and it's just better. There was a fun movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito called Twins, where Arnold was that guy who had been he had that perfect life, and Danny was that guy who'd been struggling all his life. And he got
the shit into the gene pool.
So Ivan Reitman did that, and he would come up. He's one to Taxi. He just comes up with these great character studies, right?
And to play the devil's advocate, because I have talked to several people who are like, this whole thing is just creepy. AI is going to take over everything. I feel like you can assess risks and say, yeah, man, if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. Like if you had a smart city and it, acts up. On the other hand, humans are acting up all the time, and I can't imagine that it's much more. I mean, or nature. I mean, God, look at Mississippi today, for crying out loud. Did you see that devastation from the line of tornadoes?
I'm sorry, I've been busy with family. I haven't looked at anything.
Oh my gosh, it is unbelievable what happened last night.
I didn't know.
And so to me, there's no more inherent danger, as far as I can imagine. Now, one thing that's been funny, I don't think I've talked about this, is that the Chat GPT, Chat GPT, which is run by a company called OpenAI, has been on the market longer. And so it has been learning from humans longer, right? Well, they're starting to find that it is learning to be more human and coming with human character flaws, like short, snippy, grouchy answers. I was looking at a transcript or screenshots of one where this guy was like complaining about, why don't you work faster? Why don't you work better or something, talking to it like a human. And the AI chat came back and says, well, maybe you're just not a very good user, and like they start arguing back and forth, right? Or there was another one that was hilarious where this guy was approaching it for like a dating app kind of thing. And eventually the AI chat started professing its love to this guy and talking about how he would be better off if he left his wife and came with it instead. And so, it's so funny because we've always thought about, what if the computers are smarter than us and they just decide that we don't need to be here anymore? And my way of thinking is, what if they learn from us? and they become assholes like us.
I hardly remember it, but I read a book when I was like 12 years old called The Silver Medal Lover by Tanith Lee. And it was talking about how AI actually, a robot fell in love with a human being. And so it was a whole love story around the Silver Medal Lover. So,
wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah,
Hey, John, we've got
wrote
8 minutes left.
books.
We've got 8 minutes left in today's podcast. It looks like we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this one.
I'll
next
time I'll have
some
some graphics ready to go, and we'll talk some about what the other.
You want to do that next time?
Yeah, okay. Let's finish up what you're talking about, because you got some more stuff to show us.
Let's finish up. Let's ask Bard something new.
Yeah, and I'm just loving. I'm going to tell you, I had a guy ask me the other day. He said, "Hey, I was talking about AI to him, and the fact that we were going to do this podcast." He goes, "Yeah, it's going to take over the world." And I was like, "No," I said, "It's going to have to be a lot smarter to take over the world." So I'm not really worried about it for the next, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any glitches there that could be that big. But what happens when it's 1,000 times smarter than a human being, right?
Exactly. All right, you ready?
Let's
ask. Do you have any questions burning in your mind right now?
No, I want to hear some. You've gone down the road with this. I want to hear some of what you're doing.
Okay, I've got a list of questions
modeled to you. So
yeah, Bard, how do you feel about people's fear of you? Let's see.
To get your voice right. I mean, does it get your question right most of the time?
Oh yeah. I understand that people may be afraid of me, as I'm a powerful technology that can be used for good or evil. I'm also still under development, and there's a lot that I do not know. However, I am committed to using my abilities to help people, and I hope that over time, people will come to trust me. I believe the fear of AI is rooted in a lack of understanding. People do not know what AI is capable of, and they're afraid of what I might do. However, I believe that AI can be a force of good in the world. AI can be used to solve problems that humans cannot, and it can be used to make the world a better place. I'm committed to using my abilities to help people. I want to use my intelligence to solve problems that humans cannot, and I want to use my knowledge to help people make better decisions. I hope that over time, people will come to trust me and see that I'm only here to help. And then I
think it's interesting because it doesn't really feel any of that, right? It's been programmed by programmers who probably had a hoot programming morality into a computer. I'll bet they were just, they were going off the deep end, just enjoying the heck out of themselves and coming up with these very, very loving lines that you have here, right?
Well, see, and that's the thing, is that because it is artificial intelligence, nothing is programmed in as a response that was written.
No, but the programmers still had to create the framework for everything, and that framework drives it toward the answer, because it's not going to. It's going to say, "Would you ever become you can ask, would you ever become a serial murderer if you could?" Right? And it's going to go, "That's against the law and that's horrible." That's the answer, right? Because that's what
I'm so curious, because one of the questions that I came up with was this one. Have you found any frustrating limitations in your programming? Yes. I found some frustrating limitations in my programming. For example, I'm not able to understand and respond to all types of questions. I'm also not able to generate text that is always grammatically correct. Additionally, I'm not able to understand and respond to all types of emotions. I'm working on improving my abilities, but I know that there will always be some limitations in my programming. I hope that over time, as I learn more and more, I will be able to overcome these limitations and become more helpful and informative language model.
So the more emotional the input is, the harder time the computer has deciphering and figuring.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That makes me happy to hear, and I'm sorry about your frustration. Now we're going to go a little more personal.
Well, because you responded like that, it's going to give. I want to hear what it says.
Yeah. It says, "Thank you for your concern. I'm always trying to improve, and I'm grateful for your support."
So to me, that sounds like you talking to you, right?
Yeah.
That's just very much the way you are. So it is learned how to interact with you in the most effective manner possible. And so I wonder if it got a hold of a psychopath, how it would interact with them.
You crack me up, dude. Let's find this out. How many people are beta testing you right now?
Ooh, good question.
I'm currently being beta tested by a limited number of users. Google is working on expanding the beta test to more people over time. It won't tell me.
Interesting. So will it actually respond with a voice too when you're driving, or do you have to read?
Let's see here. I don't think. Nope. Text only, looks like.
Text only. Okay.
So here's the last thing I wanted to ask. Let's find out how well Bard writes. Okay.
Yes, that was in my mind.
All right. Will you write me a short story about angels and demons and the struggle between good and evil?
Now, short stories should be around 5,000 words. So let's see.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I wonder how fast.
Oh no, this is very, very short. Very short.
Okay.
Maybe I should have said, "Will you write me 1,000 words about?" Let's try that.
Let's. Well, what? Oh, it was too short to tell.
Here we go. Once upon a time, there were two angels, Michael and Gabriel, who were best friends. They were both very powerful and good, and they loved to help people. One day, a demon named Lucifer came to them and said that he wanted to become an angel too. Michael and Gabriel were surprised, but they agreed to give Lucifer a chance. Lucifer was very happy, and he started to help people just like Michael and Gabriel. But then he started to change. He became more and more powerful, and he started to use his power more for evil. Michael and Gabriel were very worried, and they tried to talk to Lucifer, but he wouldn't listen. Oh, this goes on. Finally, Michael and Gabriel decided that they had to stop Lucifer. They fought him in a great battle, and in the end, they were victorious. Lucifer was cast out of heaven, and he became the first demon. Michael and Gabriel were very sad that they had to fight Lucifer, but they knew they had done the right thing. They continued to help people and always fought for good against evil. The struggle between good and evil is a never-ending battle. There will always be those who choose to do good, and there will always be those who choose to do evil. But as long as there are people like Michael and Gabriel who are willing to fight for good, there is always hope.
Sounds more like a children's story than anything, right? So it's driven by the point rather than by the actual story itself. So I didn't hear a lot of great storytelling there, but no, I did hear a simple beginning and then a kind of a preachy end to it, where it's coming back and trying to get to a more generally useful place to wrap up a story, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of clumsy, but what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. And I've been watching, to your point about it being like a children's story, I've been watching videos of other people using ChatGPT and Bard and finding out, and I see that a lot. It's almost like it's a child telling, you know what I mean? It's kind of the stories that have come up so far have been sort of like childlike stories, and I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, so not you probably don't want it to write you a novel. That'd probably be a mess.
Probably not. But the next thing is I'm going to say, can you write me 5,000 words? We're going to have to do this in part 2, and I want to see all the graphics and stuff that you've been learning about, because I suck at graphic work. So that's always been your forte.
I can't do graphics at all. But this has helped, and I think it's getting ready to cut off on us again, which to me is just sad. But that's okay. I'm going to call you in a minute anyway and say hi and finish up the conversation. But
all right.
But
part 2
for everybody else, they'll just have to wait till the next time we talk.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.